entitled The Power of Story. Could we welcome Keith to the podium, please?
Good evening, I'm a Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Tonight I want to talk to you about the power of story, how it can impact our beliefs and our thoughts, and how it can have much more control over our lives than we may realise. But first, picture this. It's wet, darkening and dreary. The little girl pulls a shawl around her shoulders, shivers through her teeth. She plucks the basket from the ground and marches forward with determination, this despite her aching feet. The wide open space in front of her is bleak, and the hills on the far horizon are more grey than green. The trees that sit atop stand tall and threatening, branches spread like arms ready to strike. The basket starts to feel heavier in the girl's hand, and she questions if someone has switched the apples for rocks. The cold, hard gravel pokes through her thin shoes, and the frail material allows the wetness of the rain to coat her toes, making her far more aware of her cold feet than she would like. Why does Grandma have to live all the way out here? Why is she so stubborn? And why do I always have to be the one that brings her apples? Why can't she live with us like everyone else and get her apples from the orchard? After what seems like hours, the girl starts to reach the end of the path through the barren landscape, and the forest approaches. In the fading light, the forest appears monstrous in its enormity and its blackness. The path now appears more like a tongue hanging from the mouth of a ferocious beast, and the girl's determination wavers. She's heard the stories, but she's also done this trip countless times. There are no wolves or beasts here, and she scolds herself for listening to her little girl's stories. She looks to the left at the sun sliding down the horizon and says to herself, there's still time before it gets totally dark, and she steps into the forest. Does anyone know who the little girl is?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Little bit like
Okay.
We've all done that.
The point of the little story was to ask the question, doesn't that show how powerful a story can be?
Yeah.
We immediately jump to a conclusion based on some random words about a girl, some apples, a forest, and a grandma.
Yeah.
Why do we do that? It's just a story. Just a story. We all have stories in our lives. Stories that have connections and perceptions. These create a map from which our beliefs are built. But how correct are those maps at all times? We tell ourselves, I've seen these connections before, so I know what this means. Pictures triggered in our mind and our imaginations that they have a power to compel or condemn. And they control much more of our lives and our thoughts than we're aware. We jump to conclusions. We connect dots that have no business being connected. The power of stories, they have the power to condemn or compel. The words create a reality that we can see, we can hear. taste, touch and smell. I don't know if anyone else remembers it, but some of you probably weren't even born then, but anyway, in 1986 there was an ad for The Guardian. It was a TV ad, and the picture was of a skinhead running through a crowd towards a woman. The camera angle changes and pans back, and then he's running towards a man in a suit with a briefcase. It pans back again, and you actually see that he's running to save a man from rubble falling from above, from a building site. What everyone in the audience, including myself, did was we overlaid our own stories and connections and perceptions on top of those images as they appeared. Stories about skinheads being violent, antisocial and aggressive, about women being weak and vulnerable, about a man in a suit with a briefcase being a hard-working businessman who has something of value in his briefcase that a useless member of society wants to take for free. Sometimes this may be true, but we all know from the recent behaviour of our well-dressed bankers that a lack of virtue doesn't always come dressed as a ruffian. I think that was the point of the ad. What I wanted to leave you today with was something to ponder, and it's how many stories do you have? How often have you questioned those stories? And how many of those stories may have erroneous connections beneath them? Little Red Riding Hood shows how quickly we can make connections, how we can jump to conclusions. It shows how easy it is for our beliefs to be influenced by stories. And I said earlier on that it was just a story, but nothing's ever just a story. Thank you very much.